Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. And this, of course, is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. I'm Peter Ndor, and this is what's coming up on the show today. We'll be taking a look at the relationship between the media and politics in South Africa. Yeah, sometimes very, very interesting. And the question is the media doing enough to ensure that political leaders are held accountable? We'll also be touching base with the BCCSA, that's the Broadcast Council of South Africa, to understand their role in an ever-changing media landscape. Then we chat to a TikToker. Yeah, he has more than 260,000 followers. What on earth is he doing, I wonder? We'll also have our regular feature, the newspaper review, and also the usual. You'll see all of that coming up on the show. Right now, though, don't forget you can engage with us on social media using our Twitter handle, #SABC Media Monitor. We'd love to hear from you, so please put your messages there. So before we get into our highlighted stories on the program, let's first take a look at what's on the front pages of our newspapers today. And we begin with the Sunday Times. And this is the story with the Sunday Times. The paper's reporting on the tarnished face of local government in the Northwest. The paper reports that the feud between the ANC factions has run some already dirt-poor municipalities into the ground. The Sunday Independent, let's take a look at that. Well, that has this morning highlighted the horrors of vigilantism. This is after at least 8 men were beaten, tortured, burned to death by a group of vigilantes who accused them of being part of a group of criminals in Zandspruit. The Sunday Tribune is debating on whether to continue with municipal elections, and they say that this will likely end up in the courts as political parties and experts differ on their views. In the meantime, former Deputy Chief Justice Musa Neke has been told to do an inquiry to see about the feasibility of those local government elections. The Sunday Tribune, well, the Weekend Argus rather, is also reporting on the municipal elections which are around the corner and how the DA's Jordan Hill-Lewis has emerged as a favourite candidate to stand as mayoral candidate of the city of Cape Town. The Sunday World this weekend is reporting on how former President Jacob Zuma is paying his legal fees. The paper reveals that millions of rand were in 2005 suspiciously transferred from the state-owned Itala Bank to pay the former statesman's defense team in the arms deal court saga. And I'm told that some of that money was used to refurbish one of his houses that he lived in after former President Thabo Mbeki fired him. So that should be an interesting one. And Dr. Zwelin apparently helped facilitate this as well. The City Press, Jacob Zuma's last stand. And this story talks about former president saying that it is the liberation struggle that's on trial as he defends his relationship with Shabir Sheikh and is attacking his detractors. Apparently this week he's going to do everything he can to stay out of jail using his usual concoction of conspiracy theories, attacks on the prosecution, playing the victim and mobilizing mass support for his cause. Well, that's something certainly to look out for. That's the front page of the City Press. All right, so we're going to take a closer look at some of those stories a little bit later on the program and when we do our local newspaper review. So stay with us for that. But first, let's take a break, and then after that, politics and media. Interesting brew. Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Now, the South African media has played an important political and social role in society, contributing to a culture of democratic debate whilst playing a watchdog role to keep political power to account through investigative reporting into corruption and malfeasance. However, some have reservations, arguing that the relationship between the media and politicians in South Africa is one that is often characterized by controversy. The media has at times been accused of underservicing society by not holding politicians accountable for their actions. Is this true? Well, to help us discuss this, we're going to get two proponents of the media, and I'm pleased to say that I'm joined by News 24's political editor, Kanita Hunter, and also we're hoping to get on the line Pretoria News editor, Pete Rampedi. Yeah, right, let's start with Kanita. Very good morning to you. You heard the introduction. Sometimes the public say that we're not doing enough to hold politicians to account. What's your take about that, just as a general statement?
Well, Peter, the reality of it is that at the State Capture Commission, there was a concession made when the president of the ANC appeared before Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, where he conceded that it was the media that worked tirelessly to hold the ANC and to hold politicians accountable during the years of state capture. And one can take it a step further and say that in the years that South Africa's state was being captured, it was the media that really withstood that. And it was the fourth estate that really held South Africa's democracy together. Now, undoubtedly, there is definitely shortcomings and there are lessons to be learned all the time. That's why it's important for us not to be arrogant, but it's also very important to note that South African media has done an incredible job in not only holding to power, but basically being the defender of South Africa's constitution and constitutional democracy. And I think that you and I can agree that our constitutional democracy was definitely under threat. And it was the media that played a very important part.
All
now,
right.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, we can explore a lot of what you've said just now. I just want to bring in Pete Rampedi to get his first thoughts. Pete, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Good to have you on the program. It's been a while. Your thoughts about the media holding politicians to account, particularly as we are in an election year? Hello, Pete, can you hear me? All right, okay, we're struggling to get Pete Rampedi. He himself sometimes is on the front pages of the newspapers. And it is a curious thing, isn't it? Because sometimes when you do push back, the politicians push back themselves. And once you start defending yourself, you start to question as a public, what is the story? Who is the story? Are you holding people to account or are you defending yourself? Kanita?
Yeah, I mean that's a definite point that we as the media need to look at internally in terms of at what point do we become the story, but I find that there's been an interesting shift in the level of harassment that we face from politicians, and that it has become personalized. And so it's no longer, before you would see, attacks on the SABC, but now you have Peter Ndoro trending and facing these unprecedented levels of personal attacks. And so the reality of it is that we live in a different world, and journalism has become a little bit more personalized. Yeah. But for me, the only solution in terms of having a healthy relationship between the media and politicians is, number one, that a healthy relationship does include tension. You cannot have journalists that are lapdogs. You cannot have journalists that are, for the lack of a better word, stenographers. You have to have that healthy tension that exists based on respect, based on integrity. There was a very interesting talk that was given by former editor Songezo Zibi at the South African National Editors Forum Ethics Conference a week or so ago, where he was talking about, the over familiarity between journalists and politicians, and I thought that was a very important teachable moment for us as political reporters, as journalists, in that, where does the line end? Is this, for example, the Treasurer General of a party from Bushbuck Ridge, is it, are they your Treasurer Generals? Should you refer to them as TG, for example? And I thought that was an interesting point and an interesting learnable, teachable moment. I think that the premise of ethics, and this is a conversation me and you've had before, Peter, about we don't have the luxury to make mistakes considering the level of disinformation and misinformation. Now, when you made reference to local government elections, I think that it's a bit unfair for to criticize the media in saying, do you hold politicians sufficiently accountable, particularly because it's almost we banging our heads. If you look at the front pages of the newspapers today, you saw a deep focus on the Northwest. I remember writing very similar stories 5, 6, 7 years ago. You look at Inside the City Press today, there's a focus on the Sunduzi municipality, the Pietermaritzburg, and how local government has effectively failed there. And so it's almost, you're writing these stories and it's a repetition of the same thing because there is no change. And the concern that I have for some of my colleagues is a little bit of the despondency that comes into the work that we do, because you write about the chaos that unfolds in the Northwest, for example, when you saw the shutdown of Mahikeng around the resignation of Supra Mahumapelo. What was that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? And then you have the exact same problems. And then you have reports to Parliament, Auditor General reports repeating the malfeasance, repeating
Kanita, I'm going to come back to you just now, because I'm curious now, does exposing all these things actually even make a difference? Because sometimes a voter is going to vote Nomaganjani to their political party, and they'll just find ways to defend the malfeasance. Pete, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, thanks very much, Peter, and good morning to the listeners of Media Monitor.
Great to have you on the program. And you're known as being fearless and always being out there to expose things. Do you think the media collectively has done enough to make sure that citizens are properly informed about what their politicians are doing on their behalf?
Certainly no. Peter, I think as the media we have not done enough, and the reason that for that is that there's been a tendency of us in the media being too comfortable around certain politicians and treating them as infallible. Secondly, there is a problem of political partisanship and willful ignorance by some prominent journalists in the country. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. If you look at how, as the media, and we have been covering stories of late, the same stories or the same subject of late, compared to how we used to cover them in the past, you will see a glaring difference between how we are now covering those stories. I'll give an example. Look at the ESCOM story, the Zondo Commission, the SOE's collapse, the CR17 bank statement, and the PPE fraud, for example. How the media in the past, or some elements in the media in the past, used to cover these stories and how they're covering them now is completely different. There was a time when we held ESCOM executives accountable. We exposed irregularities and corruption and fraud by ESCOM at the time, which was good and commendable. But now, what we are doing or how we are covering the ESCOM story is completely different. what is happening now is that ESCOM story is covered from the official line's point of view. We have adopted the official line. We only tell the public what ESCOM executives want them to know, and we're even reporting load shedding as breaking news. So breaking news, there's going to be load shedding around 7 o'clock.
So Pete,
Secondly,
is it the journalists or is it the owners of the media houses that are forcing this different narrative?
I don't think, Peter, it's the owners per se, because if you check what is happening, you'll find that certain journalists or certain editors from a certain media group would cover ESCOM and the Zondo Commission completely differently from their counterparts within the same group, which shows you that it's not the owners saying cover ESCOM and Zondo this way. It's the individual journalists and the individual editors who do that. And I think we shouldn't allow that to cloud what is happening, because if you ask them, they're unlikely to tell you that their owners told them to cover the ESCOM story or the Zondo Commission one way or the other. For me, I think it's individual journalists who must be held accountable, and it's individual editors who must be held accountable, because as we all know, they are the ones who supposedly are editing those papers. Secondly, look at the Zondo Commission now.
Yeah.
How the Zondo Commission is covered, or how some witnesses within the Zondo Commission are covered, is different from how others are covered. There are those who are treated as credible witnesses who are there to assist the commission, and their submissions are treated as fair. And there are those who are treated as dodgy and corrupt people whose evidence must be treated with suspicion until proven otherwise. You will also recall that there was a time when evidence emerged out of the Zondo Commission about Ranjani Mimisan having benefited from the slush fund at the SSA. Look how some journalists covered that story. It was evidence, credible evidence, emanating from the commission, but some of us turned a blind eye. We never even reported that story. But when similar allegations or similar evidence comes out of Zondo about certain people, and then as the media were quick to say, look at Anna, look at independent media, look at Rampage, look at Ndoro. It's that kind of discrepancy that I think is a problem. Look at the PPE fraud scandal. When it emerged, we had some journalists literally defending the fraud that had been exposed, saying that this story is not credible, it's part of a fight back campaign, so-called, and it's also part of an attempt to undermine the presidency of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Is that kind of dishonest by the media, who now can't even acknowledge that they were wrong, because everything that came after that story pointed to the story being credible. Look at how the SOE collapse is being treated now.
I'm going to stop you because we're running out of time, but I think you've made your point. And Kanita, I don't know if you want to add to that, because I started to notice for sure that some newspapers are definitely part of certain views, depending on which faction in the ANC, for example. There are some papers I know for sure will have a positive story or a negative story about the president every week. It just happens that way. Is this coincidence, or is this happening for real?
I think, Peter, we need to have a little bit more depth in making those type of analysis. And there's nothing that Pete said that I don't disagree with, in terms of that is the dynamism of the South African media landscape that we operate in. And I think that by saying sweeping things like, things that, certain papers having positive stories about the president, negative stories about the president, I think it doesn't add to the credibility that we all need, because then somebody can make the sweeping statement that the SABC is pro, and I'm just use an example, pro the president, or Pete Ndoro's bulletins And I think that you need to have a little bit more depth, and it doesn't help the discussion. I think that where we need to be is, what should the relationship be? There should be a healthy tension. We should, number one. Number two is that there needs to be that co-regulation, the self-regulation that Pete raised these valid concerns, and we could raise the concerns back to say, your institution should be part of the press council. Let's have those conversations so that we can lift, number one, the bar as the entire media industry. Number two, we promote ethical journalism across sectors, especially not the big media houses only, but this is also needs to transcend to community media, which is absolutely suffering at the moment. And the third point that I'd make in this regard is that for us to have a level of professionalism where you don't have any allegations of brown envelopes, etc., that we as the media can present ourselves as ethical, as not, falling for factions. And I think the best way to do it is, number one, to have these non-finger pointing conversations about why it's so important for us to reform ourselves in terms of ethical journalism, to raise the bar, and to professionalize our work so that we can withstand the scrutiny that we get from the subjects of who we report on.
All right, important point. I mean, I think that's why SANEF eventually had that inquiry, didn't they? Kanita, I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. I know we're going to chat again a little bit later on to look at the papers, but a final point from you, Pete. I don't know, just I'm curious about, and Kanita raised it earlier, the relationship that journalists have with some of these politicians. When does it cross the line? Because there's a familiarity that you need to get access, but then sometimes, as Kanita says, you need to have that tension. And that tension can often get you blocked getting that access. How do you balance this?
Look, for me personally, Peter, I am not necessarily concerned about, I'm not in the business of being liked by politicians. What I think should be happening, or the kind of relationship that we should have between the media and politicians, is a relationship of mutual respect, not a relationship where we strive to like each other, or we are obsessed about being in each other's good books. We just need to have an honest relationship of mutual respect, not a relationship where we treat the media, treat some politicians as infallible, while others are treated as inherently dodgy and corrupt. And secondly, what doesn't help the media currently also is what Kanita alluded to earlier, that some media houses and independent is not part of the press council. That's neither here nor there, but it's that level of dishonesty and obsession with media, with independent media, that doesn't help the situation, because whether the media is part of the press council or not doesn't negate the fact that we need to be accurate, responsible, and we also need to be fair towards our subjects, and we also need to be truthful. And wherever we are found to be untruthful as the media, we should be held accountable, whether or not we are part of the press council. Is neither here nor there. But the members of the Tuma Media Group, of which Kanita is, are obsessed with independent media, which clouds their judgment when it comes to the relationship between the media and politics, because they seem to think they have a right to tell independent media how to behave, or to tell independent media journalists how to behave. They forget that they are our counterparts in the media industry. They are not our lecturers, and we are not accountable to them. We just happen to be colleagues in the media industry. But they have arrogated to themselves the right to lecture us at independent media on how we must behave, how we must write stories, how we must relate to politicians, how we must relate to the Ramaphosa administration. It's that level of dishonesty which doesn't help anybody.
All right. Pete, Rampedi, I think we're going to have you both in again, and I hope next time we're actually sitting next to each other so we can debate this properly. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts this day. That was Pete Rampedi, editor of Pretoria News, and we'll be speaking to Kanita Hunter, who's the News 24 political editor, a little bit later on. All right, stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, and in exactly 30 minutes time you'll have an opportunity to watch the agenda on the channel, and let's find out from Blaine Herman just exactly what you can look forward to. Top of the morning to you, Blaine, always looking quite suave on a Sunday. So what's on the show?
Thank you, my brother. No, very good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. Packed program this morning. 4 hours we have with you. Look, while we continue to monitor this ceasefire between Gaza and Israel here in South Africa, various organizations continue to picket in Cape Town, we understand. Our man on the scene is Corbin August. He'll be bringing us the latest. Also, allegations of discrimination against women security officers at some West Rand public clinics have emerged. Makaketa Motlabe is going to bring us more on this. What are these allegations all about? Stay tuned. After 10 o'clock, we'll tell you more. Also, on our watch, we are finding out more about trading in traditional medicine here in South Africa and what traditional healers are calling for. For more, you just have to stay tuned. All those stories and much, much more coming up between 10 and 2. Brother Ndoro.
All right, Blaine, you know that I always say that you're the best dressed guy on TV. That's why I've chosen the same colors as you today to match your style.
Did you?
Thanks so much,
you
Blaine.
You are my mother's favorite anchor, brother. Good
we'll
to
catch
see
you later, brother. Okay, so the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa, BCCSA, is an independent judicial tribunal that was established by the National Association of Broadcasters in 1993. The BCCSA regulates broadcasting on issues such as violence, hate speech, issues affecting children, sex, the broadcasting of news, amongst other issues. But in a world where most conversations are continuously shifting from mainstream media to online, it then poses the question of the relevance of such a tribunal. Well, for more on this, I'm now joined on the line by Advocate Boitumelo Tlhakula. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Ndoro, and good morning to SABC News viewers.
All right, let's chat a little bit about the BCCSA. Are you happy with what you're able to do? We'll talk about the environment that you find yourselves in now, but do you think that you make a difference with the work that you do?
Thank you, Peter. But I think within the broadcasting environment, we're still making the difference that it was the objective when they started the BCCSA, because the broadcasters still take us seriously when it comes to what they need to regulate whenever they broadcast and what they need to monitor before they can broadcast any form of contact whatsoever. So, and given the fact that we still ruling, we're making judgment, and there's still appeals, and there's active participation between the BCCSA and the broader broadcasting environment, we believe that we still, valid within what we're doing and the spaces that we are in.
All right, so nowadays our newspaper sales are going down. TV audiences are being challenged by YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. And you're, I suppose, stuck in a certain range in terms of where you can influence. Do you still have a role then, given that, it seems that people can do whatever they like in terms of broadcasting things on YouTube, for example?
In terms of our constitution, we are only limited to operating within the broadcast environment. And what I mean by broadcast environment, I mean within your normal TV or the radio environment, excluding your YouTube and the broader social media. That is one of the discussions that we've been holding for the past 2 years as to many of the things or maybe many of the complaints that gets to be broadcasted with us or made with us, they also overlap into the social media. However, we are only limited towards the TV broadcast or maybe the radio broadcast.
So there are a lot of online radio stations now that I am pretty sure are not registered and they just get on with it regardless. What do you do about those?
You know, with the online radio broadcasters, ICASA has to be the one that deals with it. We are aware, but however, they are not our subscribed licensees. So we do not have any form of monitoring power towards them at this point. We will hear from ICASA going forward as to what is going to happen with them and how they're going to be regulated going forward. But for now, we don't have any power or regulatory mandation towards them at this point.
All right, okay. So just to be clear then, the public, when they want to complain about something, who is it that they can complain about?
They complain about any content that they find within our broadcasters.
So that's the public broadcaster, radio and television, and those licensed operators on radio and television as well, on DSTV, for example.
Yes, that includes the one in the DSTV, because that would be the subscription broadcasters. There's the ones where we are free subscribers, and where we have normal prime subscription, like your DSTV and the normal SABC News or SABC channels or the ETV channels. So for both, broadcasters, they can lodge whatever complaint that they have, be it political, be it racial, be it sexual, be it about children, be it about any range of topic that they feel it makes them uncomfortable with regard to the content that has been broadcasted.
What are you finding the public is most concerned about, and is this something that's changed over time?
The media environment evolves, hey? So you would find that in current times, most of the complaints are around corruption. If you have noted, in particular, the ENCA has been into this corruption mandate that they've been broadcasting for a while now. So issues around corruption and how they get to be broadcasted, because then the complainant would be concerned about how are they then, get to be reflected within the public, to be their concern, and they would complain from that point of view that maybe their privacy or their dignity is been implicated because of the way that the content has been phrased. So it would be corrupt. In current times, it would be issues around, the religion. Our religion environment has received so many complaints with the rise of various religious entities who've been in the spotlight currently. And, the issues of politics is not that much, because, with politics, you can oppose as much as you can. It is phrased in such a way that opposition is not a big deal. However, with religion and things like race, they are mostly subjective with regard to the person who's complaining. So it is never about objectivity around that point of view. So we find a lot of complaints coming from the corruption element, either from, and the racial elements, and also from the religious elements currently. With regard to children, it has gone down a bit, but like I stated earlier, the media environment has been evolving ever since.
I've got to tell you, one of the things that I find is the inconsistency in terms of radio and television. So on television, one gets a sense that it's much stricter, the adherence levels are much higher, and then you switch on the radio in the morning driving to school with your children, and a song will come on air with graphic lyrics, and it's quite embarrassing as a parent, and you've got a child in the car. And I just wonder if enough checks and balances are there for some media, like radio in particular.
Radio has been strictly monitored, Peter, as a matter of fact. We've seen many broadcasters and their presenters having had tough judgments from the BCCSA, which has led to some of their dismissals and many other things. However, remember, like I said, the media environment has evolved, and the current social dynamics has also evolved. Because of the pandemic, not lots of children seems to be going to school as it was before. We are all embedded in the virtual schooling and every other things. So even if at this stage there might have been cases where there are songs which are having graphic, details within them. Children are not in the cars anymore like they used to in the past 5 years. So the level of criticism when it comes to parents and the level of music that gets to be broadcasted, then they don't coincide simply because of that. But it doesn't mean that there is no transgression when it comes to that. However, there should be a complainant when it comes to that.
All right. And then perhaps as a final one, do you have teeth? Can you punish offenders?
We do impose fines. We do impose many judgments. And, for us, because our process starts with arbitration, if you're not happy with our arbitration, then we go to a tribunal. If you're not happy with our tribunal, then we go to appeals. However, the only thing which is free when it comes to that would be the arbitration. When you appeal our judgments, then you have to make payments. And mostly that gets to be done by the broadcast because they get to be fined, and there's a whole lot of impositions of the need to apologize within their broadcasting environment or to rephrase their statements which had offended various complainants. So they find it quite harsh towards them. Hence, most of the time they get to say, can we just then appeal? And for them, it's a cost-effective process because there's inclusion of various levels of counsel up to the SCs and the retired judges. So it is a cost-effective for them. So from that point of view, we feel like when somebody has to take decision-making into task, it gets to be a bit, kind of cost implications are part of that as well.
Advocate Tlakung, thank you so much indeed for joining us, and we wish you more strength and power with the important work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndoran. Thank you to the SABC viewers. Thank you. Bye.
Great. All right, that's Advocate Boitumelo Lintwe Tlakung, who's a BC CSA Commissioner. So if you have a concern, and I'm sure you've heard the ads, that if you've got a concern with your broadcaster of choice, if there's an issue, you can always bring those issues to the BCCSA and they investigate them. We've been investigated a few times, and I've got to tell you, even I myself have been investigated. So it's a good thing to have a watchdog watching on your behalf. Now, video sharing social network service TikTok has been uncovered as the fastest growing social media app. The app was widely popular with some content creators rising to the Hall of Fame based on their engaging content on one person one person who has been riding the TikTok wave is TikToker Prince Dube, who has over 265,000 followers on this particular app. Before we chat to him, let's take a look at this.
PD ufunani. I hear you, and in all honesty, with everything we've been through, all I can say is but Prince, you hurt me, dude. You hurt me. I'm sorry. Said I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. No, and you don't mean those words. You know that. Shh, Wena. Baby, tell me what to do, please. No, Prince. If what I am is what you need, love me for me. Baby, I know I messed up, but I don't know what to do. Even Konamanje, Prince Konamanje.
All right, so that's Prince Dube there, and we joined live by this TikTok phenomena. Prince, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a...
So, are people recognizing you in the streets now?
Definitely, for sure. Like, I can't even, go to a mall without being recognized, having people jumping up to ask me for pictures. And my life has literally turned. Like, from one day I was a nobody, and then now people want to take pictures with me, which is a great feeling, to say the least.
So what is it about TikTok? Is it an age thing? Because I've never been able to get my head around it. And maybe it's because I've got gray hair.
Johnny, bro, no. It's definitely not an age thing. It's a creative platform, and you find a lot of people who just use the app as a creative platform, as an outlet to just, release whatever they're doing. And you could have a TikTok account. Why not?
Yeah. So what is
Why not?
So what is it about
Yes.
TikTok that makes you successful? And do you think that what you do on this platform would work somewhere else? Or is it the nature of the platform and what people expect there that makes you successful there?
To be quite honest, what has worked for me, it has been the consistency in knowing that there are endless opportunities that lie within the app of TikTok, especially if you tap into the influential and creative industry. It has opened a couple of doors for me in terms of, working with on big campaigns. So as long as you're consistent and you have a niche of something that you have to offer the audience out there overall, then you might just hit your lotto, your 777 jackpot.
So how did you figure out what that magic bullet was?
Hey, to be quite honest, I've always thought I was funny, but only my cat used to laugh at my jokes. So, so one day I decided, let me just do something creative, and then people liked it. And based on the engagement, I saw that this is what my audience is really appreciating from me. And then I just put my foot on the pedal and I went for it. And now, a couple of years later, 250,000 followers, verified, and over 5 million likes on all my content on TikTok.
Wow. So does that put you under pressure to be funny all the time?
You don't even understand. Like, every time they tell me I'm not funny, and then they like it more when I make fun of myself. But no, jokes aside, it does put pressure, but it's also an opportunity for me to grow, to not be stagnant and be comfortable where I am. Because some people, they go viral once and then they expect everything that happens to me to happen to them as well.
All right. I suppose the beauty about these apps is that you are the, you're in control of your own destiny. Before, you would have had to try and convince a broadcaster to give you a platform. And now your only limitation is your own creativity.
100%. I mean, I never in my mind did I ever think I'd be talking to you. So already praise be to God for that. But 100%, it's you just have to tap into it and understand also that the world is changing. So the world of media content creation is really expanding. And for people who are used to the traditional way of doing things and getting that media coverage, they need to understand that things are changing. And, just like where I am today, they could be here as well.
And these models, it's great to have 265,000 followers. Does that translate into revenue?
Oh, yeah, it does. Like I said, the higher you're following and the more content you create, companies, they look at you and they want to, collab with you. They want you to work with their brands. So over time, they do pick up, compared to my friends who have over 1 million, they get more campaigns. So I'm really just on my way up to the top, basically. But there is some revenue. I'm not even going to lie.
All right. You know what? I'm going to have to take TikTok seriously, man, and learn from the best, the Prince Dubes of this world. So sometimes I guess you have to be spontaneous when you're in a moment, you just see something and then you switch on your camera and go live. Is that how it works?
Yo, 100%. I love engaging with my audience because I like to hear from them more. And that is what TikTok has done. It has literally opened up the gap, because if you look at other apps, you can't really engage so much with your people. But with TikTok, man, there's just a family vibe to it. And that's what keeps me going back there. And I am in demand, if I say. Fed cakes in winter have nothing on me.
Do you know what? I'm going to be your apprentice. You're going to get me onto TikTok and get me going. Prince, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, my brother. Take care.
Gracias.
There you go, Prince Dube, king of TikTok. Yeah, it's quite a thing, isn't it? There's so many things out there. I'm fascinated by what engages certain audiences. I've got to say, I'm probably predominantly a Twitter person. I love LinkedIn as well, and I find that there's very different people on these platforms, and I'm sure that's the same with TikTok. So I'm going to experiment, as I'm sure some of you might do as well. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping things up by taking a look at the papers, but let's start with Kanita, who I'm sure, Kanita, you've got a response. Peter Ampedi said something towards the end of our conversation, and by that stage you had gone.
Well, Peter, I mean, I don't want it to be a mudslinging match between myself and Pitt. I think that we both are passionate about the state of the media industry. And I think that I don't think I should respond to his personal insults against me, particularly because this platform is about how do we better ourselves as journalists, and how do we do the one thing that we need to do, and that is to gain the trust of people in the interest of the Constitution and democracy. And so I think that if there's anything, it's just for us to put our differences aside and remember why we do what we do. And that's the most important thing.
All right. Okay. So having said that, what is on the front pages or inside our papers this weekend? There are certain themes that have been developing over time. And one of them, given the nature of his problems, is the president, isn't it? The former president.
Yeah, so that, I mean, it's a big week that's going to happen this week, in the fact that, in the sense that the former president is going to appear in court again, and we know that he filed an application for the recusal of prosecutor Billy Downer. Those papers, 141 of them, surfaced obviously last week, but the Sunday papers unpacked it in detail. City Press having it on their front page. It's quite interesting, the levels of accusations that are contained in those papers. A lot of it we've heard before, Peter, particularly around the fact that the conspiracy against the former president, what he claims. But I thought it was quite interesting, him saying that Shabir Sheikh was not the only person that has helped him, that there's so many people, including Nelson Mandela and other people like Vivian Reddy, also helping him. And then the twist in those papers is the conspiracy that Leonard McCarthy, the former head of the Scorpions, is allegedly linked to the CIA and building this case of victimhood, which the courts will then have to adjudicate on before the trial sets on. A lot of people have argued that this is part of the Stalingrad delay strategy that the former president, had employed for the last, over a decade, almost 2 decades now.
Okay, so what else grabbed your attention? Your media group's paper this weekend is?
City Press, so that has Jacob Zuma's last stand. I particularly found a report on Peter Maritzburg descending into squalor quite interesting, coinciding with the front page of the Sunday Times about the Northwest and how we used to not bathing every day. Northwest towns left helpless as ANC factions battle it out. I think that's 2 very important stories about just the level of service delivery. Peter, you mentioned earlier around the debate around whether local government elections should be postponed amid the pandemic. Obviously, we know that there's now a public process to be headed by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Motseneke. But I think that it's just, we cannot ignore the fact of how derelict our municipalities have become, how even metros that were well run have really facing the brunt of inefficiency, of maladministration. And so I think that the Northwest is a good example because of how, ANC factionalism has unfolded there. You saw in Mangaung, there was those protests, service delivery protests, because, which obviously turned violent last week. And so you're going to see a lot of this in the run-up to the local government elections, particularly because people are just fed up with the level of services that they are getting. And I think the important thing for me is to watch not necessarily results, because you see, the ANC, if by-elections is an indicator, you see the ANC, people disillusioned with the state of the opposition, and the ANC, holding some ground. But I do think that you're going to see a level of disillusionment. I know that the IEC has said this in the past, that they're worried about voter turnout because of COVID-19, but also just, I would think, as a result of just disillusionment amongst voters. And you see it in, when we step out of urban areas and you go to these towns and you realize how, a town like Pietermaritzburg that was, well run a decade ago, literally descended into absolute squalor.
You know what, Kanita, I wish we could talk a bit longer about these issues, but we'll have opportunities till the 27th of October, and let's hope that we can influence how people vote. My gut feeling, though, is that people either vote or they don't, but they'll vote for the same party all the time. But maybe we can change that as the media. All right, thanks so much indeed for joining us, and we'll chat again soon.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, that's the politics editor at News 24, Kanita Hunter. And that's where we come to the end of today's edition of Media Monitor. Join us again next week with more of this theme. And for me and the team, please be careful out there. COVID is still with us, so make sure you keep all those protocols still done. All right, bye everyone. Have a great one.